Why, hello, everyone. Good evening. For those of you connecting with us live, it's nice to have you in connection. Whenever you're connecting with us, the Swedenborgian online community. Today, I am feeling quite blessed, as usual, to be connected with you all. I always find our interactions, your wisdom especially, to uplift my spirit. So I really thank you all for this relationship. And today our message is focusing on hope, as it is the first Sunday, the first week of Advent, which, at least in our rendition of things, focuses on hope. And our service today, our multimedia message, which you can find in the links, is called Hope Even in Darkness. And of course, hope otherwise. But even in the dark areas of our spirit and of society, I think there is hope. There's a reason to be optimistic and to lean into health, even when we may think it won't get us very far. Divinity has another story for us, right? No matter what your tradition, I think that's typically the message, that God is within all things hoping to uplift him or herself in that situation if we allow her to. So thank you for joining us. Thank you all in the chat. See, it's nice to see you. How's it going? Alyssa, Albert, Ward, Mark, and you folks, how are you doing today? I already checked in on some of you. I'm glad you're okay, even if you're dealing with 18 inches of snow. That's crazy. And as you share, what's going on in your lives with each other and me, I really hope you do. Let us just take a moment to also reconnect with our breath, with the present moment, not overburdening or pushing our spirit or our mind into the future and anxieties of that or even of the past, but accepting the peace and love that is within us, deep within us in every moment. And with your breath, move some aspect of your being physically, if you don't mind. Of course, we always do, right? As long as we're alive, we're in movement, we're in rhythm, we're in dance and connection. Let us open our scripture on our cyber altar, as our tradition goes here, representing how divinity speaks to us, connects with us through the deep elements of our mind, of our holy texts, of our experience, even our experiments, of everything, especially what we hold dear. God tries to uplift us, communicate with us in every moment. Let us allow her to speak to us, to embolden our own hopes within and in manifestation, as the theme for today goes. Let us also light our candle on our cyber altar, representing the heat and light, the love and wisdom, the goodness and truth that divinity inspires within our hearts and our minds. No matter our traditions, let us lean into the love and the wisdom within our traditions, within our cultures, our living, so that we can embody divinity in our own diverse way, more and more, acknowledging that really what makes us original and beautiful is our reception of infinite qualities. Well, it's nice to have our altar set up. Yes, greetings, folks. Yeah, thank you, Albert, for that comment. I'm actually going to touch on your comment in a few minutes. If you didn't know this, our multimedia messages, which are our text sermon and our music videos, they now allow comments. We've kind of switched to this blog format, so you can leave a message there. Even if you can't catch this live, we can talk about what you have to say if you leave a message in one of those multimedia messages. And Albert left some really insightful thoughts for us today, which we'll touch on as we move into our own reflection this evening. So today I kind of opened up this message with a quote from Trump, with Trump speaking about gun control, and him actually calling for stricter gun control, if you will believe it or not. Him asking for background checks, saying that we're going to get this done for higher ages when it comes to buying guns, and also to embolden our mental illness healing efforts in this country. And the video I left is from earlier this year, but actually he's said a lot about this a week or so ago, which is what kind of inspired me to talk about this. And it's really kind of amazing. I couldn't find any clips of what I saw earlier in November with the press conference and interaction that Trump had with Republicans and Democrats about gun control, but it was kind of amazing to see how shocked some people were that he was saying this, and how giddy some people got that he seemed to be pretty set on this. And this fit for me in this idea of hope even in our darkest moments, the dark areas of our lives, especially in our bright areas, of course. Usually it's those areas of us inspiring the darkness to transform. Because for me, often Trump is an exemplar of, distorted politics, selfishness, selfish states in general within politics. And I think we all have that within us. So it's not just Trump. But for me, it's kind of cool that there can be a moment, even with someone that many people dismiss, you may not, and I think that's your right, it's really amazing that there can be this moment of clarity and hope and insight. And I think we should lean into that. I think when we see that in others, even without them saying something like this, when we hope to uplift that in other people, to see the beauty, no matter what they seem to be about in other people, I think it's really leaning into divinity and life around us. And that's our call in the season, especially in the season of Advent. Part of the reason I put it in the guise of light in the darkness is because typically that's kind of the image you have in the Advent season. You get the birth of Christ, or the spark of divinity, let there be light. All these things kind of fit within this Advent season of light entering the darkness. And actually, Swedenborg talked quite a bit about darkness in this world, and also how much divinity is imaged here, is living here in everything, in everything. And that there is great hope for all of us, and a deep connection with each other and God in this universe. And so, I found it inspiring that, Donald Trump would talk about mental illness, and, almost like he was hoping for better support in his own mental illness, right? I think often that's really what we're calling for if we're calling for change. It's for change within, for change without, and it's nice that he has some recognition there. Let us each hope for that kind of recognition in our lives. For me, one kind of mollifying thing for my spirit and perhaps my own insanities is music. So forgive me for playing a little bit as we continue to talk. What are your hopes in your darkness? I'm turning to the chat seat right now to see what kind of conversations being had. Yeah, you would say President Trump if you were on air. Yeah, President Trump, Donald Trump. I mean, he is the president, Trump. I think it's okay for, at least in my opinion, for myself, to shorten it. But you're right, it is an important moniker. Thank you for that insight. And it's interesting that, Barack Obama, too, of course, called for transformation of a lot of things in our country. And the quote that I included with him in our message is about hope, and how it's not just something, hollow. It's not just a, being a blind optimist, but it's this thing inside us that insists that something better awaits and that will come. It'll be manifest if we have the courage to fight for it. It will be advent in our lives as we allow its advent in our hearts and motivations. That's kind of cool. Of course, for Emanuel Swedenborg, it being advent in our hopes and motivations is heaven being advent within us. It's divinity, taking form, taking shape, and taking root in our lives. Because no matter our tradition, it's really our selfish states that allow us to promote kind of a hellishness in our feelings and our surroundings, and this has a wide effect on our society. It's unfortunate because I think, often we talk about society's ills or positives in this big way. America is, many people say the United States is exceptional, or whatever country you're in might be considered exceptional. But it's really our hearts that lend itself to the exceptional state of our communities. It's us individually being willing to embolden our own efforts and to see it and embolden it in others. And that takes hope. It takes the advent of real insight and wisdom in our lives to do that. In one of our opening songs today, Lana Del Rey says we are powerful beings, that we are, gifted this strength from divinity, in my opinion, in Swedenborg's opinion, and that we can receive more of this strength, this ability to work and really have an impact in our own lives and in others, the more we really realize that it's not us. It's not this selfish point of view that allows us to be active and to have all that we have. It's actually community. It's actually something greater even than that, the higher power within us and around us that gives forth to community that may be divine community in a sense. So for me, it's of utmost importance in this Advent season to really start to recognize what Advent could mean in our lives. How can we increase divinity's ability to be present, to enlighten? And often it's the mundane things, it's the everyday things, or things that we kind of dismiss, like finding a counselor, like touching base with an advisor or friends about what's really going on with us. Allowing a little bit more transparency and light in that sense in our own lives, and inviting more light in, even if it's from a seemingly undivine source, although of course we have a shared life from divinity. And so it can also take the form of spiritual practice, as we like to motivate in each other in this community. Self-care. I think it's really cool in society nowadays that there's this move towards self-care, and if you go to Instagram, you see that some of the most popular areas of Instagram, people of Instagram communities, center around self-care. How do you, improve your life in these ways that really matter to people? That's why they're following those threads. And to me, it's ministry. It's a new age of ministry in this world. So yeah, to Elbert's quote later, I do mention the darkness of society today, because I do think there is darkness in society, but not that it's all darkness. And in fact, there's a renewed bent of dispelling darkness, I think, in today's culture, in today's youth, and the youth of our 80 to 90-year-olds and on and under. There's a renewed spirit in our hearts, I think. But often it can get caught up in, a selfish modality. A modality of egotism and rejection of those who don't worship us, who don't sing our praises clearly. It's easy to get hostile and not know it, because we're often so used to it, I think. I think it's easy to get pessimistic about people, maybe for good reason. But often it's like a transference thing. It's something that we project from ourselves on other people, even if it's not there. And yet we could do the opposite. We could look for the good. As Albert so beautifully put in his comments, we can be more optimistic towards the world. We can be more hopeful in general. And actually, speaking of Albert's comments, I want to turn toward them more specifically right now. You can find comments of our multimedia messages at the bottom of the messages. And Albert uplifts how, it's hopeful that Donald Trump and other political leaders, maybe Barack Obama in your mind, incentivizes people to get active because they're angry maybe, or maybe they're inspired. It incentivizes people, it has recently, to kind of take charge because they're not happy with how things are, which I think is a healthy reaction, especially given, as Albert uplifts, how triggered people have been by Donald Trump's actions, his comments towards women, his kind of harassment modality often, especially in some of the history of his coming in and how he spoke throughout his political rise. It's quite heinous, honestly. And I think we each need to be willing to see that in ourselves too. Take some ownership of our own heinousness, because we each have it. And also to really have gratitude for the beauty, for the hope embodied in us already, because we each have that too, in ways beyond imagining. The reason I focus somewhat on kind of the awareness of our own darkness is because often we don't really see it in ourselves in a real way. We don't see it in our motivations. We like to project it. And we like to see the good things in ourselves, but we usually take ownership of it, I think. I know that's been my history. So, being aware of these things doesn't give them power. It actually helps us to dispel it if we're willing to, especially if we're willing to stop owning it so much. So, for me, I think Donald Trump has the perfect name. President Trump. Pharaoh Trump. His name embodies dominance. Both president does too, right? And I think for us, whether we think he's a good leader or not, we should have a willingness to be interrogative of him and our own leadership in our own lives. But can you find hope there too? Can you find hope in the part of you that you may think is lackluster, that hasn't been performing rightly? Can you accept how it's been and move forward, knowing that you receive all these things? And your anxiousness, your guilt, your shame especially, don't really serve you unless they serve to transform you. Guilt and being burdened by too much, let's say, hate towards yourself or anyone else is a burden to the degree that it's not helping you transform, to change for the better, to change society for the better, to galvanize, as Albert was uplifting in his comments. And I think it's unfortunate that that's a truth, but it's just a reality of there's two sides to almost every coin, except for divinity. And we should lean into that divinity, acknowledging the good source, the infinite source of our own goodness. Because, when we know that our source of motivation, of wisdom, of heart is so infinite, it gives us that infinite wellspring to tap into. We don't have to think about, okay, well, this is just me, I can't do this. The more we believe it, the more we know and can embody it, the more we can embody that infinite wellspring of goodness and beauty in our spirit, of self-care, of Advent, of hope, within and manifested, as Christ's story goes, right? So for Emanuel Swedenborg, the advent of Christ is the embodiment of this hope. It's the embodiment of light and darkness, of warmth and coldness. Whether or not we agree with this 18th century mystic, it's kind of interesting to hear his take on it, that the history of human being on this planet, human beings on this planet kind of started, trending negatively at some point, which he says is kind of the metaphor of the Old Testament to a point. And that eventually, we became pretty surface. We became very oriented towards corporeal things, surface things, selfish things, dominance and materialism. And that God knew this, and that it was long prophesied and imaged in other cultures and imagined that God would enter the flesh and reset or realign things in such a way for the trajectory to go the other way. And for Swedenborg, that's what Christ was. Christ was the embodiment of Sophia, had the soul of Jehovah, the gender-inclusive, divine, holy one, that is more person than we are, in a sense, more personhood, more humane, infinitely humane. And that Christ, through her advent, overcame unending or infinite temptation, all temptation. And as God overcame this in her humanity, she started setting the heavens and hells aright in our connection with them. Even when we're the most selfish and dark that we can be, God has set it up in such a way to be able to connect with us if we're finally willing to allow her to. And I think that's a message of great hope, to just acknowledge that, there is darkness sometimes in our lives, and yet the true thing, the real thing, is the hope, is the light, the warmth, the wisdom, the structures, the life surrounding us and within us. And being willing to see when we're trending towards destruction is actually helpful, because then we can allow divinity to turn us around. So with that, I want to turn back to the chat, see for a minute or five, and see what conversation you all are having. How does that all strike you? I'm curious what your thoughts are there. Were you not getting voice, Paige? I hope the rest of you seem to be able to hear me. Good. Paige says, she resonated with this phrase in the worship, first glimmers of hope. In the appreciative leadership that we teach in our Famer Institute, the institute Paige works with, and I have something else to share from Paige in a minute. We teach C track fan. I believe that's right, yeah. And your worship is a way of doing this. Oh, cool. That's great to hear. Well, you've inspired me quite a bit in your mentorship, so thank you, Paige, for that. C equals knowing what we want to see happen. What behaviors we want to see. Okay, yeah, I like that. Track equals being alert for the smallest sign of this behavior. Yeah, perception, alert. Fan equals raising its visibility, praising the person, etc. I saw this worship as an example of this. Oh, cool. Well, thank you, Paige. Albert says he's not familiar with the Famer Institute. Please share more about the Famer Institute in the Chatsy page. And then you also say, and this part in the worship by Obama was very related to this concept. Hope is not blind optimism. It is not ignoring the enormity of the task ahead or the roadblocks that stand in our path. Yeah, so true. So, I thought it was just nice to have both of our last two presidents share a little bit of positivity in our message today. I thank you for uplifting that, Paige. And also, I want to uplift something else from you, Paige. I hope it's okay that I share this. I think it is. I'm 99% sure it is. I'll cut it out of the video if you don't want me to. But right now, I'm showing your calendar that you sent me of this public art from around the world and these beautiful quotes and messages within them. How amazing! If anyone wants one of these, dare I say it, Paige, they can email me, and maybe we can get one to them. I don't know if you want to charge a fee. I'll let them know. But I think this is a great ministry of yours, Paige, and quite a beautiful thing, and you've blessed me with it. So I thought I'd bless other people with it. I want to show this very last one. It says, "My prayer for all people of the planet, peace within," and then in parentheses, myself. "Peace between," parentheses, "you and me. Peace among," parentheses, "all people. And to this I pledge myself. Join me lovingly. Virginia Satter." And it has an image of the trumpeting angel from the Salt Cathedral. So you can look that up if you'd want, the Salt Cathedral in Zapaquira, Colombia. Wonderful. And, if you don't mind, Paige, maybe I can create a link for people to find more of this, or they can just, email me at info@Swedenborgiancommunity.org. Wow, thank you. And Paige also shares, the Famer Institute is our global leadership development program for mid-career faculty members in developing countries. www.famer.org. Wonderful. And with that website, I also want to share Swedenborgiancommunity.org for those of you finding us via podcast. You can connect with our videos, with our Chatsy, how people are sharing with me now on that website. You can also get free books at Swedenborgiancommunity.org/explore. You can download them for free, Swedenborg's books. And, they've been quite a blessing in my life. Maybe you'll find that that's the case for yours as well. And I think with that, I'm going to take a moment to take another deep breath and turn towards a moment of prayer and prayerful reflection as I play some music from Ken Turley, Revelation 21, The Holy City. And then we'll conclude our message and try to uplift each other in benediction and care in a moment or two.
And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no more sea. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. And now the dwelling of God is with humanity, and God will be with us and be our God and wipe away all of our tears, and there will be no more death, no more crying and pain, for the old order And then the angel showed me the river of life, clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of God, right down the middle of the great street of the city. And on both sides of the river stood the trees of life, bearing 12 seasons and yielding fruit each time. And the leaves of the trees are for the healing of the nations. There will be no more darkness. We will not need the sun for a light, for the Lord God will be our light and reign forever and ever.
O Holy One, please embolden yourself in each of our living and intending. Embolden your hope in our spirit, our perspective, and our perception. Help us turn away from our pessimism of orientation, both in our awareness and in our actions. Uplift our spirit as you uplift others through us as well, transforming our hearts more and more into your heavenly abode, and helping us to transform our abode, our communities, our relationships, more and more into that as well. Thank you for your advent in our spirits, in our lives, in our world, in our universe, as you give forth to our universe and our lives and our spirits. We ask that this advent grow exponentially, these incarnations and manifestations of you around, within, and through us transcend where they are today forever and ever, closer and closer to your infinite heart. In your name we pray. Amen. Well, thank you for joining this Interfaith service. And before we wrap up entirely, I just want to uplift this idea again of, what Paige mentioned, the part that Paige highlighted, of seeing and uplifting glimmers of hope around us. Maybe that fits with the season, like glimmer, like the shining of snow and things around us. But being willing to see it in others, even where we wouldn't before, even in a way that we wouldn't before, even if they don't seem to change, and taking inspiration in that and trying to uplift it in them. One thing I've noticed with our president and with my own darkness is, I'm not saying he's all dark, but that, in each of these states that we often dismiss and become upset about, there's something there that we can use to embolden health. Our president, for example, seems to kind of pick up on the people around him. Whatever he's listening to, whatever he's connecting with, he takes it and he pushes it forward. I mean, sometimes it's, he kind of pushes through, or says he will push it through some of the important steps of government. But I think that opens a door, right? And it uplifts this idea that it's in community, it's in connection, that we're transformed too. our goodness is propelled forward. Our the darkness that we've been receiving and thinking of as ourselves, our destructive habits, even the things that we're not really willing to see in ourselves, that can be propelled towards goodness too, in spiritual community, in spiritual health, and in broader connection. So in your communities, I invite you to find ways to embolden hope and the advent of God through yourself, through practices, through connection and finding counselors. There's a lot of different ways to find self-care. Maybe, following some hashtag self-care on Instagram could help, who knows. And just leaning into the advent of God in your life and being willing to see it in other people, even if they don't seem to be leaning into it at all. That's our calling, really. That's our ministry, is to increase the heavenly kingdom around us. And I think that's a key step. It's being willing to see it around us, even as we try to motivate it around us. And I think it's a beautiful thing. I think it helps us release our tensions, our anxiousness. And even if you find yourself in the most direful of situations, it's interesting. Swedenborg says that the angels, which are just people and aliens in heaven, according to him and his visions, they, the most loving heavenly angels, in a sense, they have no fear about the future. They know that everything they have serves a purpose, and that they're more joyful and peaceful and innocent the more they just accept it and try to make things better in it through God's strength, recognizing and accepting where it's coming from instead of, saying it's all about themselves. In fact, the more they're focused on themselves in these kind of selfish states, the more relatively depressed they become, which is an interesting thing to hear from Swedenborg happens in heaven. If you want to hear more about what happens in heaven, we have a Heaven and Hell book club going on where I try to summarize every section. Not quite the same way I did The Universe and I invite people to answer questions about it as we go along. You don't have to read to join in that conversation. But moreover, I think it's these glimmers of wisdom, whether or not we think they're true, these insightful metaphors, stories, that can motivate us as well. And I think we each should continue to strive to find our sources of hope in Advent, in our thinking and in our living. So thanks again, everyone. We love you here at the Swedenborgian community online. We hope to uplift your voice, so always feel free to call in during our services on Thursdays and Sundays, pretty much every week. You can call in at 646-564-9571, and you can always join our chat-see at swedenborgiancommunity.org/discuss, as these beautiful, insightful community members do and are doing today. And I thank you all especially for everything. And your beautiful prayers in the chat. See, you're quite inspirational. Thank you so much. And so go forth knowing you are quite loved